Lebanese officials say at least 9 people were killed and nearly 2,800 injured when pagers used by the Hezbollah militant group exploded simultaneously across the country. Hezbollah blamed Israel for the blasts and said the attack would not go unpunished. There was no immediate comment from the Israeli military.
Chaotic scenes like this played out hundreds of times throughout Lebanon and Syria. Behind the chaos, pagers used by the militia group Hezbollah to communicate with its operatives and supporters. An untold number of the devices exploded, lasting around an hour. Ambulances were seen crowding the streets, bringing the dead and the wounded to hospitals throughout Lebanon. The country's health minister has confirmed thousands were injured in the unprecedented attack. The Ministry of Health has recorded more than 2,800 injuries, 200 of which were in critical condition and required either surgical intervention or entry into the intensive care units. It is still unclear what caused the devices to explode. However, a Hezbollah commander described the attack as the, quote, biggest security breach since the recent hostilities with Israel began. In a statement read on Lebanese television, Hezbollah, which is considered a terrorist group by the EU and others, placed the blame squarely on Israel and vowed to punish the perpetrators of the attack. As the number of injured continues to rise, Lebanese health authorities are calling for fresh blood donations as hospitals rush to treat the victims of today's attack.
Matthew Levitt is an expert on counterterrorism and intelligence at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. He joins me now from Washington, D.C. Welcome to DW, Matthew. Have you ever heard of anything like this and at this scale?
Nothing like this. It reminds of Western penetrations of Iran's centrifuge system, where widgets that were procured abroad and were messed with caused those centrifuges to spin too fast and overheat. But nothing like this, especially in a denied space, a place that's difficult for operatives from the West and from Israel to operate. This is a huge intelligence penetration of Hezbollah.
Is there any reason, according to you, to believe that Israel is not behind this incident?
It is highly likely that Israel is behind this incident. It has the fingerprints of an Israeli type of attack. It was targeted specifically at Hezbollah operatives. We know back in February of this year, Hezbollah started instructing its operatives to leave phones at home and to start using pagers to go more low-tech in an effort to try and evade Israeli signals intelligence that Hezbollah feared was behind the targeted assassinations of several of its commanders. And then they started spreading out these pagers. It's something that Hezbollah has done. We know that at least one of them was near the Iranian ambassador. There are reports that there are explosions even in Syria and possibly among Shia militias in Iraq.
Now, the cause of the explosions itself is not clear yet. There are theories about batteries exploding or explosives being planted in the pagers before. What sounds most plausible to you?
Based on what's being reported here in the United States right now, it seems quite clear that small amounts of explosives, grams, were inserted into these pagers during the procurement of them while they were in the supply chain. This was not some type of cyber issue. This was an effort to get and identify the supply chain, interrupt the supply chain, take the devices, a large number of devices, insert small amount of explosive into them, and then get them out to an adversary. Reports are that there were a couple of people within Hezbollah who kind of figured out what was happening. One of those people was eliminated, and then the Israelis decided to go ahead before the other one could say anything.
And what do you think was the greater purpose of this attack? Was it to take out as many suspected Hezbollah fighters as possible?
Look, clearly the Israelis put this in place some time ago, but it's not one of those things that you put in place and you necessarily act upon because it's clearly a very big action. And I think perhaps counterintuitively, what the Israelis are doing here is indicating to Hezbollah that they are very, very serious, that they need the 11 months of Hezbollah rockets to end, that Israel is committed to enabling the 60,000 plus civilians who've been displaced from their homes in the north of Israel to be able to go back. And this is a very, very serious message, but it's one short of full-scale war because we're getting to that precipice. We're getting to midnight, and either Hezbollah is going to back off, or I think it's quite clear that the Israel Defense Forces are going to try and push Hezbollah away from that border.
Well, that is the big question, isn't it? That will this trigger an all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah, something that experts have long warned of?
Right. I don't think that this alone does. I think there's no question that Hezbollah retaliates. But as we've seen, even in Hezbollah's commitment to retaliate for the assassination of one of its chief militants, Fuad Shukr, several weeks ago, they're trying to be careful about how they do that. Hezbollah doesn't want to do something that's going to ignite full-scale war, but they're also not willing to stop the daily shelling, understanding that that too is potentially inviting full-scale war. Hezbollah is going to have a difficult time figuring out how to calculate that response.
I wonder if you can give us a sense of just how significantly this attack may have affected Hezbollah's communication systems, because that would affect their response as well.
There are two issues here. One is their communication system. So if you're Hezbollah, you have to wonder about the security of any of your systems, not just the pager systems. We know, as I said, in February, they left cell phones thinking that the pagers are more secure. And you got to remember, this comes after a series of Israeli intelligence penetrations, getting tactical, timely information of Hezbollah planning to fire missiles at the Tel Aviv area and then carrying out a preemptive strike. That came just weeks after the assassination of Fuad Shukr, one of their most protected individuals, who's been wanted for years by both Israel and the United States. So Hezbollah's got to be wondering not only about the security of its communications, which, you're right, does affect their ability to plan something in the near term, but also more generally, not just about communications, but about the level of penetration that the Israelis have achieved within their organization. And that, too, will affect their decision-making on what to do next.
Now, such an operation must have been prepared over months. It's not something that is executed overnight, is it?
Correct. We know that this dates back to around February. Reuters reported publicly in July that Hezbollah was, in fact, moving towards pagers and away from cell phones, specifically to evade Israeli signals intelligence collection. So this was not a secret. At some point in that process, the Israelis found a way to penetrate the supply chain and to insert these explosives into these devices.
The U.S. has said that they had no prior knowledge of this attack. Do you find that plausible?
I find it likely. As a former U.S. intelligence official, we don't get to know everything that even our closest allies are doing. And if it was something about war, yes. From the Israeli perspective, the fewer people who know about this before it happens, the more likely it can succeed. So you'd want very, very tight operational security for something like this. This is a one-and-done operation. It works or it doesn't.
And in your experience, how do you expect the U.S. to now react to this situation?
There's no question that the U.S. is going to try and tamper things down so that it doesn't lead to all-out war. But I anticipate that Amos Hochstein and the rest of the U.S. Negotiators are going to be pushing even harder still to try and convince Hezbollah to accept the diplomatic deal that's on the table, where Hezbollah redeploys its fighters 10 kilometers from the border with Israel, stops firing, and the border cools, and the Israelis stop everything they're doing too. That offer is on the table, and I really hope everybody takes it.
That's Matthew Levitt, counterterrorism expert at the Washington Institute. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, I've been speaking with Makram Rabah, who lectures in history at the American University of Beirut. He told me about the atmosphere in Lebanon after these explosions.
Well, certainly people are realizing what just happened. All of a sudden, it was like a scene out of a Hollywood movie. People who are part and parcel of Hezbollah's military as well as civilian organization who were carrying outdated pager technology had their devices explode in a very weird way. I don't think that people expected that this would happen nationwide, all the way even into adjacent Syria. I think what the Israelis were able to do is to not only infiltrate Hezbollah and use this as a kind of a military or security strike, but rather more of a psychological warfare, which will remind everyone who are part and parcel of Hezbollah that they can lose a limb or they can have a kind of a permanent scar. Even though many people did die, and this is very tragic, many of the people who are still alive are very gravely wounded, and many of them have lost limbs. All of this is part and parcel of a reminder by Israel that what is happening is not a kind of a war game, but rather real violence and real killing.
OK, so Israel has made no comment on this, but we're presuming that this is Israel behind this.
Well, certainly Hezbollah in the past, even when everyone knew that they were responsible for similar attacks, they never officially take responsibility. But we are more than sure that such a kind of a high-tech security and military operation could only come from Israel. And Israel in the past have attacked Hezbollah, which has driven this organization to use, let's call, low-tech instruments, including the pager. And as you know, many of the younger generation don't really know what a pager is. So many of the news have been reporting.
Well, I was just going to say, explain to us why Hezbollah is using pagers anyway.
Because technically, a pager is a kind of a closed circuit, which is operated not by an operator like my and your cell phone works, but rather by Hezbollah. So I think that they have purchased a large amount of pagers because recently their land network and even the mobile operators have been hacked by Israel, which has driven them to go in a kind of a more low-tech fashion. And by doing so, they have been exposed to a new type of danger. And what happened today is proof of that.
And this was very public, was it? You people just walking down the streets and suddenly we're seeing explosions?
Yes, Phil. We have video footage that show people who were at the grocery store picking apples, or just people who were driving on their mopeds, and all of a sudden, by a kind of a strange sequence, their pagers exploded, and they, as you are aware, these are instruments which are carried on your body. So many of the injuries also happened because at the same time, there was a kind of a message that was sent out. So everyone fetched their device and took them up to their eyes. So many of the injuries are to the faces and to their limbs, in addition to the fact that many people, children of these fighters, were playing around with these pagers, and unfortunately, a child did lose her life.
OK, thank you for guiding us through that. Makram Rabah with the American University of Beirut. Thank you.